Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his forehead as he checked his weapon for the third time. The jungle around New Haven Colony was quiet, but it was the wrong kind of quiet. Birds should be singing. Insects should be buzzing. Instead, there was nothing but the sound of his boots on the metal walkway. Station 7 went dark 2 hours ago, said Ryan Bell, his second in command. Ryan was young but smart, and Jake trusted him more than most people. Same as the others. No distress call, no warning, just silence. Jake nodded and looked at the team behind him. 6 good people, all trained fighters. Amy Carter was there, too, their best engineer. She needed to check the mining equipment if they found any survivors. Jake hoped they would find survivors, but after 3 other stations had gone dark in the past month, hope was getting harder to hold on to. The transport landed near Station 7 with a soft thud. Jake was the first one out, weapon ready. The station looked normal from the outside. Solar panels were still working. The main building stood intact, but the silence felt like a weight pressing down on them. "Spread out," Jake ordered. "Stay in pairs. Amy, you're with me." They moved toward the main building. Jake noticed claw marks on the metal door, deep grooves that went through the steel like it was soft wood. Whatever made those marks was strong. Very strong. Inside the station, they found the first body. Pete Wilson had been a good man, worked the mines for 15 years. Now he was dead, torn apart by something with very sharp claws. Amy made a small sound and looked away. "What could do this?" she whispered. Jake had seen death before, during the war on Titan. But this was different. This was savage. Wild. Like, an animal had killed Pete, but the claw marks were too precise, too planned. They found 2 more bodies in the control room. Both men had tried to fight. Their weapons were out, but they had not fired a single shot. Whatever killed them was fast. "Boss," Ryan called from across the room. "You need to see this." Jake walked over to where Ryan stood by the security monitors. The screen showed the last few minutes before the station went dark. Jake watched as shadows moved past the cameras. Then something huge smashed through the main door. "Go back 10 seconds, Jake said. Ryan replayed the footage. This time Jake saw it clearly. A massive shape covered in dark fur, moving on 2 legs like a man, but bigger than any man Jake had ever seen. It had long arms that ended in claws, and its head was wrong somehow, more like a wolf than a human. "What is that thing?" Amy asked. Before Jake could answer, the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red light. Then they heard it. A sound like breathing, but deeper, coming from somewhere in the building. "Everyone stay calm," Jake said quietly. "Ryan, take Amy and get back to the transport. Call for backup." "What about you?" Amy asked. "I'll be right behind you." That was a lie, and Jake knew it. Someone had to stay and find out what they were dealing with. The colony needed to know how to fight these things. Ryan and Amy moved toward the door, but they never made it. The creature smashed through the wall like it was paper. Up close, it was even bigger than it looked on the security footage. 9 feet tall, covered in black fur with silver streaks. Its eyes were intelligent, not the blank stare of a wild animal. This thing could think. It looked at Ryan and Amy, then at Jake. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the creature spoke. "Humans," it said in a deep voice. The word was hard to understand, like the creature's mouth was not made for human speech. "You came back." Jake kept his weapon pointed at the creature but did not fire. If it wanted to kill them, they would already be dead. "You can talk," I learned. "From your signals, your voices in the air." The creature took a step forward. "You are soldiers?" "We're here to help people," Jake said. "You killed our friends. They took from our land. They poisoned our water. They had to die." The creature's claws extended, each one longer than Jake's fingers. "But you are different. You protect the weak ones." Jake did not understand what the creature meant until it moved. Fast as lightning, it lunged at Amy. Jake threw himself between them without thinking. The creature's claws raked across his chest, tearing through his protective vest like it was cloth. Pain exploded through Jake's body, but he stayed on his feet. "Amy, run!" he shouted. The creature stopped attacking. It stared at Jake with those intelligent eyes. "You take pain for her. Why?" "Because that's what we do," Jake said through gritted teeth. Blood was running down his chest, but he kept his weapon trained on the creature. "We protect each other." The creature tilted its head like a curious dog. "Like pack leader, you lead these humans?" "I keep them safe." For a long moment, the creature studied Jake. Then it did something unexpected. It stepped back and lowered its claws. "You are not like the others who came before, the ones who only took and never gave." Jake felt dizzy from blood loss, but he stayed standing. "What do you want?" "To see if humans can be more than thieves and killers." The creature moved toward the broken wall. "You bled for one not of your blood. You have honor. My name is Kethvar. I will remember you, human." "Jake," Jake said. "My name is Jake." Kethvar paused at the wall. "Jake. Deathbringer who protects. I name you Uncle Death, for you bring death to enemies but life to friends." Then he was gone, disappearing into the jungle like a shadow. Jake fell to his knees as Ryan and Amy rushed to help him. The pain was getting worse, but he was alive. They were all alive, and Jake knew this was just the beginning. Whatever Kethvar was, whatever his people wanted, this first meeting had changed everything. As the medical team worked on his wounds back at the colony, Jake stared up at the ceiling and thought about those intelligent eyes. Kethvar had been testing him, he realized. The question was, had he passed or failed? Only time would tell. 3 weeks passed since Jake's encounter with Kethvar. His wounds had healed, but the memory of those intelligent eyes stayed with him. He sat in the colony's main meeting room, listening to Helen Martinez argue for calling in military support. "We need soldiers," Helen said, pounding her fist on the table. "Real soldiers, not just colony security. These things killed 15 people. Jake shook his head. "They're not just things, Helen. Kethvar was intelligent. He could have killed us all but chose not to. That means something." "It means nothing," said Carl Foster, the colony administrator. Carl was a thin man who worried too much about rules and reports. "A monster is a monster, Jake. Just because it can talk doesn't make it safe." Dr. Lisa Park looked up from her tablet. "Jake's right about the intelligence factor. The attack patterns show planning, not random violence. These creatures are thinking beings. Thinking beings who kill our people," Helen shot back. Jake was about to respond when the lights flickered. The room went quiet. Then Ryan's voice came over the comm system. "Boss, you need to get to the main gate. Now." Jake grabbed his weapon and ran. The others followed, their argument forgotten. At the main gate, a crowd had gathered. Jake pushed through them and stopped dead. Kethvar stood just outside the colony's fence. He was alone and carried no weapons that Jake could see. In the bright daylight, he looked even more impressive than Jake remembered. His black and silver fur gleamed in the sun, and he stood perfectly still despite the dozen weapons pointed at him. "Nobody shoot," Jake ordered. He walked to the gate, his hand on his pistol but not drawing it. "Kethvar." "Uncle Death," Kethvar replied. His English had improved since their last meeting. "You heal quickly. What do you want?" Kethvar's lips pulled back, showing teeth like white daggers. Jake realized the creature was smiling. "To know if you are truly worthy of the name I gave you. My pack doubts. They say humans are weak, that you won only because I held back." "Did you hold back?" "Yes, but not from weakness. From curiosity." Kethvar stepped closer to the fence. "I challenge you, Uncle Death. Single combat. Not to death, but to understanding." Jake heard Helen curse behind him. Carl was already on his radio, probably calling for backup that would take hours to arrive. But Jake looked into Kethvar's eyes and saw something that surprised him. "Respect." "When?" Jake asked. "Now, if you have courage." Ryan grabbed Jake's arm. "Boss, this is crazy. He's twice your size." Jake pulled free. "Open the gate." "Jake?" "No," Helen said. "We can't let you go out there. You can't stop me." Jake replied. I'm not just security chief. I'm a citizen of this colony, and I choose to go. The gate opened with a mechanical whir. Jake walked out, his weapon holstered. He could hear people arguing behind him, but their voices faded as he followed HFY into the jungle. They walked for 20 minutes before reaching a clearing. The space was perfectly round, surrounded by tall trees. The ground was covered in soft grass that looked like it had been carefully tended. This is sacred ground, HFY said, where young warriors prove themselves. Today, you prove yourself to me. Jake looked around the clearing. What are the rules? No weapons. No killing blows. We fight until one yields or cannot continue. HFY began removing pieces of metal armor that Jake had not noticed before. You may keep your protective vest. That's not fair to you. HFY's smile returned. Fairness is not the point. Honor is. They faced each other in the center of the clearing. Jake had fought in wars, but never against anything like HFY. The creature was faster than anything that big should be. His first swipe nearly took Jake's head off. Jake rolled away and came up running. He could not match HFY's strength or reach, but he was smaller and could change direction quickly. For 5 minutes, they danced around each other. HFY attacked. Jake dodged or blocked. Slowly, Jake began to see patterns in the creature's movements. HFY favored his right side. He telegraphed his major attacks with a slight shift of his shoulders. Most importantly, he was testing Jake's responses, not trying to end the fight quickly. Jake waited for his chance. When HFY made another right-handed swipe, Jake ducked under it and landed a solid punch to the creature's ribs. HFY grunted and stepped back. Better, HFY said. Again. The fight continued. Jake landed more hits, but HFY's claws left shallow cuts on his arms and legs. Both fighters were breathing hard. Then HFY made a mistake. He overextended on a downward strike, leaving his neck exposed. Jake had a clear shot. He could have driven his elbow into HFY's throat, probably ending the fight. Instead, he pulled back and struck the creature's shoulder, enough to make him stumble but not seriously hurt him. HFY straightened and stared at Jake. Why? Because this is about understanding, not winning, Jake said. The fight ended there. HFY walked over and placed one massive clawed hand on Jake's shoulder. He spoke in his own language, a series of growls and clicks that sounded almost musical. Then he switched to English. My people call that phrase, Deathbringer who protects with wisdom. In your language, Uncle Death comes closer. HFY's grip tightened slightly, not painful but firm. You had the chance to hurt me badly but chose mercy. This is why I chose you. Chose me for what? HFY looked toward the jungle. My people are dying, Uncle Death. Not from violence or age, but from sickness. The adults survive, but our cubs do not. I have watched your kind for many months. Most humans think only of themselves, but you think of others first. I believe you can help us. Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with his sweat cooling in the evening air. Help you how? Come and see. But know this. If you come, there is no going back. You will know our secrets and we will know yours. The bond between us will be complete. Jake thought about the colony, about Helen's anger and Carl's reports. Then he thought about HFY calling him worthy, about the respect in those alien eyes. Lead the way, Jake said. As they walked deeper into the jungle, Jake wondered what he was getting himself into. Behind them, the colony's lights grew dim through the trees. Ahead lay only darkness and the unknown. But for the first time in weeks, Jake felt like he was moving towards something important instead of just running from danger. HFY moved through the jungle like he owned it, and Jake followed the creature he was beginning to think of as a friend. The Vorthak village was nothing like Jake had expected. Instead of crude huts, he saw elegant structures that seemed to grow from the trees themselves. Curved walls of woven branches and mud created buildings that looked both natural and sophisticated. Soft lights glowed from within, and Jake could hear the sound of running water somewhere nearby. But it was the silence that struck him most. There should have been sounds of life, of families going about their evening routines. Instead, the village felt empty, hollow. "Where is everyone?" Jake asked. Kethavar's ears drooped. "Hiding, or mourning. We have lost so many cubs in the past year that joy has left us." As they walked deeper into the village, Jake saw faces peering out from doorways. Adult Vorthak, all as large as Kethavar but somehow seeming smaller, beaten down by grief. Their eyes followed Jake with a mixture of curiosity and hostility. "They do not trust humans," Kethavar said quietly. "The sickness came after the sky fire, fell near the great water. We know now it was one of your ships." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "A ship crashed here? Not here. On the next world where the sun sets. But the wind carried the poison across the void between worlds. Our healers have tried everything. Nothing works." They stopped at a building larger than the others. Kethavar pushed aside a curtain made of woven grass, and Jake followed him inside. The interior was dim, lit only by bioluminescent plants that cast a soft blue glow. The air smelled of herbs and something else, the sweet, sick smell of fever. In the corner, on a bed of soft furs, lay two small forms. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The cubs were tiny, no bigger than human children, but they had the same intelligent eyes as their father. One was clearly female, with lighter fur and smaller claws. The other was male, darker like Kethavar. Both were breathing in short, painful gasps. "My children," Kethavar said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Szeth and Mira. Their mother died, protecting them when the sickness first came. Now I may lose them too." Jake knelt beside the bed. The cubs' eyes followed him, alert despite their obvious pain. The female Mira made a soft sound that might have been a greeting. Szeth tried to lift his head but was too weak. "How long have they been sick?" Jake asked. "6 of your weeks. The fever comes and goes, but they grow weaker each time." Kethavar sat heavily on the floor beside the bed. For the first time since Jake had known him, the massive warrior looked defeated. "I am pack leader, I should protect them. But I cannot fight an enemy I cannot see." Jake studied the cubs more closely. Their symptoms looked familiar: fever, weakness, labored breathing. It reminded him of cases he had seen during the war, soldiers who had been exposed to certain biological agents. "Kethavar, I need to ask you something important. When the ship crashed on the other world, did anyone investigate the wreck?" "A hunting party went to see if there were survivors. They found only death and empty metal. But they brought back strange objects, thinking they might be valuable." "What kind of objects?" Kethavar gestured to a corner of the room. Jake saw pieces of metal and plastic, clearly salvaged from a human ship. Among them was something that made his blood run cold. A bio-containment unit, its seals clearly broken. "Do you still have whatever was inside that container?" Jake asked. "The healers used it, thinking it might be medicine. It was a clear liquid that smelled of nothing." Kethavar's eyes widened as he understood what Jake was thinking. "It was poison?" "Not intentionally, but yes, probably." Jake stood up, his mind racing. "I need to get back to the colony. Our medical officer might be able to help, but I'll need samples of your blood and samples from the cubs." "You would do this? Help the children of your enemy?" Jake looked down at Szeth and Mira. The male cub had managed to lift one small paw, reaching toward Jake with obvious effort. Without thinking, Jake extended his hand, letting the cub touch his fingers. Szeth's paw was burning with fever. "They're not my enemies," Jake said. "They're just sick kids." The journey back to the colony took 2 hours. Jake carried the blood samples in a cooling unit Kethavar had provided, made from hollowed gourds and some kind of natural refrigerant. All the way back, he thought about what he was going to tell Helen and the others. The colony was in an uproar when he returned. Security teams were searching the perimeter, and Helen was shouting orders over the radio. She spotted Jake the moment he walked through the gate. "Where the hell have you been?" she demanded. "You disappear for hours with that monster, and we're supposed to just wait?" "I was learning the truth about why they attacked us," Jake said. "And they're not monsters, Helen. They're people and they're dying. Carl Foster pushed through the crowd. I don't care what they are. You had no authority to leave this colony without permission. I had every right as a citizen, Jake shot back, and what I learned might save lives on both sides. He explained about the crashed ship, the biological contamination, and the dying cubs. As he talked, he watched the faces around him change from anger to shock to horror. You're saying we accidentally poisoned them? Dr. Park asked. That's exactly what I'm saying, and now I need your help to fix it. Helen shook her head. Even if that's true, they still killed our people, because they thought we were killing their children, Jake said. If someone was poisoning human kids, what would you do? The crowd fell silent. Dr. Park stepped forward and took the blood samples from Jake. I'll run tests, she said. But even if I can identify the pathogen, creating a treatment could take weeks or months. Those cubs don't have months, Jake said. Maybe not even weeks. Carl Foster cleared his throat. This is all very touching, but I can't allow any cooperation with hostile aliens. I'm confining you to quarters until I can contact Earth Command. You can't do that, Jake said. Watch me. Carl signaled to 2 security guards. Escort Mr. Morrison to his quarters. Post a guard. As the guards moved toward him, Jake felt a familiar weight on his shoulder. He turned to see Amy Carter standing. Behind him, along with Ryan Bell and several other colonists. Carl, Amy said quietly, you might want to reconsider. Jake looked around and realized that more than half the crowd was now standing with him. These were people he had protected, people who trusted his judgment. Helen looked uncomfortable, and Carl was clearly outnumbered. This is mutiny, Carl sputtered. This is democracy, Ryan said, and we vote to help the cubs, Helen sighed. Dr. Park, run your tests. But quietly. I don't want this getting out until we know more. As the crowd dispersed, Jake felt a hand on his arm. Dr. Park was looking at him with something like admiration. You really think we can save them? She asked. Jake thought about Zeth's tiny paw reaching for him, about the grief in Kethavar's eyes. We have to try, he said, because if we don't, this war will never end. Dr. Lisa Park worked through the night, her lab filled with the quiet hum of analysis machines. Jake sat nearby, watching the data scroll across her screens. 3 days had passed since he brought back the blood samples, and time was running short. It's definitely a human pathogen, Lisa said, rubbing her tired eyes. A mutated strain of something called Kepler flu. We carried immunity to it when we first spread to the outer colonies, but the Vorthak have no natural defenses. Can you treat it? Jake asked. Maybe. The good news is that human antibodies should work against it. The bad news is that I'll need to modify them for Vorthak physiology. And that's going to take time I'm not sure we have. Jake's communicator buzzed. It was a message from Kethavar, sent through the long-range transmitter they had set up for communication. The message was short, but devastating. Zeth grows worse. May not see another dawn. We need to try something. Now, Jake said. Even if it's not perfect. Lisa looked at him with worry. Jake, if we give them the wrong treatment, we could kill them faster than the disease would. And if we do nothing, they die anyway. Jake stood up. What do you need? Fresh blood samples from both cubs. And I mean fresh. Less than an hour. Old. The antibody structure changes as the disease progresses. Jake was already reaching for his equipment belt. I'll get them. Jake, wait. Lisa grabbed his arm. Carl has guards watching all the exits. He's determined to stop any more contact with the Vorthak. As if summoned by her words, Ryan Bell appeared in the lab doorway. His face was grim. Boss, we have a problem. Carl just called a colony meeting. He's going to demand a vote to classify the Vorthak as hostile and request immediate military support. Jake felt his heart sink. If the colony voted for military intervention, any chance of saving the cubs would be lost. Earth Command would order the extermination of the Vorthak settlement. When's the vote? He asked. 1 hour. Jake looked at Lisa's equipment, then at the data on her screens. An hour wasn't enough time to finish the treatment, but it might be enough to start it. Ryan, I need you to create a distraction, something big enough to draw the guards away from the north exit. What kind of distraction? I don't care. A fire, drill, a false alarm, anything, just give me 10 minutes. Ryan grinned. Leave it to me. Jake turned to Lisa. Pack up everything you need to test blood and prepare antibodies. We're going mobile. Jake, that equipment isn't designed to work in the field. Then we'll have to make it work. 20 minutes later, Jake was running through the jungle with a backpack full of medical equipment. Behind him, alarms were wailing at the colony. Ryan had done his job well, triggering multiple false emergencies that had drawn every guard away from their posts. The Vorthak village was quieter than before. Jake went straight to Keithvar's dwelling and found the warrior sitting beside his cub's bed holding Mira's small paw. The female cub was unconscious, her breathing so shallow it was barely visible. Szeth was awake but clearly dying, his eyes unfocused and glassy. Uncle Death, Szeth whispered when he saw Jake. The words were in English, learned during Jake's previous visits. I'm here, buddy, Jake said, kneeling beside the bed. I brought help. Kethvar looked up with desperate hope. You found medicine? We're working on it, but I need new blood samples and I need to work here. While Lisa set up her equipment, Jake drew blood from both cubs. Their blood was darker than human blood, with a metallic smell that reminded him of copper. Szeth whimpered during the procedure, but Mira didn't react at all. Her body is shutting down, Lisa said quietly. If we're going to try this, it has to be now. Jake looked at Kethvar. The treatment isn't tested, it could kill them. They are dying now, Kethvar replied. At least this gives them a chance. Lisa worked with desperate efficiency, her portable equipment humming as it processed the blood samples and prepared modified human antibodies. Jake held Mira's paw, feeling how cold it had become. The cub's breathing grew more and more shallow. Got it, Lisa said finally. It's crude, but it should work. Who first, Mira? Kethvar said without hesitation. She is weaker. Lisa injected the treatment into the female cub's arm. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then Mira's breathing seemed to deepen slightly. Her body temperature, which Jake was monitoring with a medical scanner, began to rise from dangerously low back toward normal. It's working, Lisa breathed. They gave Szeth the treatment 10 minutes later. The male cub's response was even more dramatic. His eyes cleared, and he managed to lift his head for the first time in days. Uncle Death, he said, his voice stronger. You made the hurt go away. Jake felt tears in his eyes. How do you feel, Szeth? Hungry, the cub said, making Kethvar laugh for the first time since Jake had known him. The celebration was interrupted by the sound of approaching vehicles. Through the village's woven walls, Jake could see lights moving through the jungle. The colony's security force had found them. They come in anger, Kethvar said, standing. My people will defend this place. No, Jake said quickly. That will only make things worse. Let me talk to them. Jake walked out to meet the security team, his hands visible and empty. Brad Jones, Carl's new head of security, was leading the group. Brad was a former military police officer who saw everything in black and white. Morrison, you're under arrest for unauthorized contact with hostile aliens, Brad announced. They're not hostile anymore, Jake said, and I just saved 2 lives. You compromise colony security, move away from the building. I won't do that. Brad reached for his weapon, but before he could draw it, Amy Carter stepped out of the jungle, behind him. She wasn't alone. 20 other colonists were with her, including Ryan Bell and several other security officers. Problem, Brad? Amy asked sweetly. Brad looked around, suddenly outnumbered. This is a lawful arrest. Based on whose authority? Asked Dr. Park, who had also appeared with the group. Carl Foster's? Because last I checked, we voted him out of office about an hour ago. Jake stared at her. What? Ryan grinned. While you were saving lives, we were having that colony meeting. Carl called for a vote to classify the Vorthak as enemies. Instead, we voted to remove him as administrator and elect Helen as our new leader. Her first official act was to authorize medical aid to the Vorthak. From behind, Jake came the sound of small feet. Zeth had managed to walk out of the building, still weak but standing on his own. The little Vorthak looked up at the group of humans with curious eyes. "Uncle Death," he said clearly. "Are these your pack?" The effect on the security team was immediate. Several of them lowered their weapons. Brad himself seemed uncertain for the first time. "He's just a kid," one of the officers said. Mira appeared in the doorway, supported by Kethvar, the female. Cub was still weak, but her eyes were bright and alert. When she saw Jake, she made a soft sound that was clearly a greeting. "Uncle Death bring good medicine," she said in halting English. Brad holstered his weapon. "This changes things." "Yes," said a new voice. Helen Martinez stepped out from behind the trees. "It changes everything. The Colony Council has decided to establish formal relations with the Vorthak. Jake Morrison is hereby appointed as our first interspecies liaison." Jake looked around at all the faces, human and Vorthak, watching him. Zeth had walked over to stand beside him, and the little cub's presence seemed to symbolize something new beginning. "I accept," Jake said. Kethvar placed his massive hand on Jake's shoulder. "Welcome to the pack, Uncle Death." 6 months after the first treatment, Jake stood in the middle of what had become known as Harmony Square. The space sat exactly between the human colony and the Vorthak village, a neutral ground where both species could meet safely. Today it was filled with the sounds of children playing, both human and Vorthak cubs learning games together. Zeth had grown during his recovery, now standing as tall as Jake's waist. His fur had filled out, black with silver streaks like his father's. He was teaching a group of human children how to track animals by scent, his young voice serious as he explained the differences between prey and predator trails. No, Amy," Zeth said to Amy Carter's 6-year-old daughter. "You smell with your nose, but you think with your mind. The rabbit goes this way because water is there. Always follow the logic." Mira had become fascinated with human technology. She spent most of her time in Tony Silva's workshop, learning how machines worked. Her small claws made her incredibly good at detailed work, and she had helped Tony design several improvements to the colony's mining equipment. "Uncle Death," Mira called from across the square. She was working on something with Tony, their heads bent together over a complicated piece of machinery. "Come see what we made." Jake walked over, still amazed by how normal this had all become. The device they were working on looked like a communications array, but smaller and more elegant than anything humans had built before. "It's a translator," Tony explained. Mira figured out how to make the crystal resonators more efficient. "This thing can handle 12 different languages in real time." 14, Mira corrected. "I added 2 more last night." Jake smiled. "What are you going to do with it?" "Send to Earth," Mira said. "So your people know we are friends now." The word friends still sounded strange in her accent, but Jake understood her perfectly. Over the months, many of the Vorthak had learned English while several humans had picked up basic Vorthak. Communication was no longer a barrier. "Speaking of Earth," said a familiar voice behind him. Jake turned to see Helen Martinez approaching, a tablet in her hand and a smile on her face. "We just received a priority transmission from Colonial Command." Jake felt a familiar tightness in his chest. Messages from Earth usually meant complications. "Good news or bad news?" "Both," Helen said. "The bad news is that 3 other colonies have reported contact with intelligent alien species. 2 of those contacts have gone very badly." Jake's heart sank. "How badly?" "Colony Epsilon 7 is under siege. New Bombay lost contact with their exploration teams. Both situations are classified as hostile." "And the good news?" Helen's smile widened. "Earth Command wants to send a team here to study our unprecedented successful first contact protocols. They want to learn how we did what nobody else has managed to do." Across the square, Kethvar was approaching with several other adult Vorthak. Jake had learned to read Vorthak expressions over the months, and he could see that Kethvar was troubled about something. "Uncle Death," Kethvar said formally. "We must speak privately." They walked to the edge of Harmony Square, where a small garden had been planted with both Earth and Vorthak plants. The mix created strange but beautiful combinations. Earth roses growing next to silver-leafed Vorthak moonflowers. My scouts bring word from the far territories, HFY said. Other human ships have landed on worlds where our cousins live. The news is not good. What kind of news? War. The humans came with weapons and demands they did not seek to understand. My cousin packs fought back and many died on both sides. Jake felt sick. HFY, I'm sorry. Most humans aren't like that, but some... I know this. HFY placed his hand on Jake's shoulder, a gesture that had become their standard greeting. This is why I must ask something difficult of you. What? Will you come with me to the far worlds? Will you help teach other humans the way of the pack? Jake stared at him. You want me to leave New Haven? For a time. The dying spreads, Uncle. Death. Not the sickness of the body, but the sickness of fear and hate. You healed my cubs. Now you must help heal the wounds between our peoples before they become too deep. Before Jake could answer, small feet came running toward them. Zeth and Mira had finished their lessons and games. They threw themselves at Jake with the enthusiasm only children could manage. Uncle Death! Uncle Death! Zeth shouted. Mira says her translator can talk to the big ships in the sky. Can we call them? Can we tell them we're friends? Mira added. Jake looked down at the two cubs who had started this whole journey. They trusted him completely, the way children trust adults, to make the world safe for them. The responsibility felt enormous. Would you want to travel to other worlds? Jake asked them. To meet other humans and other Vorthak? Both cubs nodded eagerly. Adventure, Zeth said. New machines to learn, Mira added. Jake looked at HFY. If I do this, I want full diplomatic status, not just for me, but for any Vorthak who come. With us, we do this as equals or not at all. Agreed. Helen had been listening from a short distance away. Now she approached with her tablet. Jake, I've been monitoring Earth Command communications. They're desperate for a solution to these alien conflicts. If you can replicate what we did here on other worlds, I'll need a good team, Jake said. Dr. Park, definitely. Tony Silva, for technical support. Ryan Bell for security. What about us? Zeth asked. Jake knelt down to be at eye level with the cubs. That's up to your father, but I'll tell you something. I don't think I can do this without my family. Mira tilted her head, a gesture she had learned from watching humans. We are family? You are my pack, Jake said, using the Vorthak term that meant something deeper than family. Chosen bonds that could never be broken. 3 weeks later, Jake stood on the bridge of the Earth-ship Mediator, watching stars stream past at faster-than-light speeds. The ship was heading for Colony Epsilon 7, where humans and aliens had been fighting for months. Behind him, Zeth and Mira were learning about human space travel from Captain Sarah Kim. Both cubs wore small environmental suits that allowed them to survive in the ship's human standard atmosphere. They looked like tiny astronauts, and the effect was adorable enough to melt even the most skeptical crew member's heart. HFY stood at the main viewing port, watching space with the same intense focus he brought to everything. Tell me again. About these humans we go to help, he said. Military types mostly, Jake replied. They see problems as things to be defeated, not understood. It's going to be harder than what we did at New Haven. But we have advantages they do not expect, HFY said. Such as? HFY gestured toward his cubs, who were now teaching a group of human crew members how to play a Vorthak coordination game. We have hope on 4 legs and proof that enemies can become family. Jake watched as Zeth carefully showed a young ensign how to balance 3 objects while Mira corrected the human's technique with gentle patience. Around them, hardened space veterans were laughing and playing like children themselves. Uncle Death, Mira called out. Come play with us. Jake joined the game, acutely aware that everyone on the bridge was watching. Here was a human man playing alien children's games while traveling through space to prevent a war. 6 months ago, it would have been impossible to imagine. Now it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Captain Kim approached as the game continued. "Mr. Morrison, I have to ask, are you really confident this approach will work with a military situation?" Jake looked at her, then at the mixed group of humans and Vorthak laughing together. "Captain, I learned something important over the past 6 months. Fear makes enemies out of strangers, but curiosity can make family out of anyone." As if to prove his point, Zeth had just taught the ship's weapons officer how to purr, a sound no human throat could make, but the attempt was making everyone laugh. "Besides," Jake added, "we're not going there to win a war. We're going there to end one." The Mediator continued its journey through space, carrying with it the hope that what had worked on New Haven could work anywhere. In the ship's common area, human children and Vorthak cubs played together, creating something new, a generation that would never see each other as enemies. Jake watched them play and thought about the day Kethvar had first called him Uncle Death. The name had meant something different then, a warrior's title earned in combat. Now it meant something better, a protector's name earned through love. And as the ship traveled toward its destination, Jake could only hope that love would be enough.